starting here in just 2 minutes, but I wanted to let everyone in the audience know that if they have public comment that's directed towards something that is not on the agenda, to please fill out a form and make sure that that comes up to me. If it is on the agenda, such as, for example, baseball, you can wait until that agenda item comes up on the agenda. I also wanted to take a moment to remind all of my fellow trustees to make sure you talk into the microphones. Based on changes to state law, House Bill 890 was passed in this last legislative session, and that requires, as of July 1st, 2024, school board meetings must be recorded and posted to the district website, and they'll stay on the website for up to 1 year. So when you join us to speak, please make sure to speak into the microphone and say your name and whether you live within the school district, and then also just know that that is being recorded. It is our best effort. We're making our best effort to try to post these meetings within around 24 hours, but state law gives us, I believe, 4 or 5 days to make that happen. So just for your information. All right. It is 5:30. I hereby call this meeting to order.
That was kind of wimpy.
All right. Wonderful. Mr. Patrick, will you please do roll call?
Yes. Kim Skornagoski.
Here.
Bill Bronson.
Here.
Mark Finicum.
Here.
Marley Senchow. Amy Thompson.
Here.
Paige.
Here. Excused. Wonderful. Please rise. We'll say the allegiance. Thank you. And I open the floor to adopt.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second?
There's a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as presented. Is there any questions or concerns from my fellow trustees or from our community? Wonderful. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, we have an agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented with a special note to the donation of manual and power wheelchairs.
Second?
All right. There is a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda. Is there any questions or comments from my fellow trustees and from our community at large? Wonderful. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. First up, we have the superintendent's report. Ms. Hoyer.
Well, good evening, Madam Chairperson Skornagoski, members of the board, and members of our community. I am really glad that everybody is here tonight. It's so nice to see everybody's faces because we have a wonderful celebration that we're going to do at the end of my superintendent's report. But we're going to start with a couple of announcements. The first one is that Great Falls Public Schools is going to be having our job fair coming up on Wednesday, August 21st. It's from 11 to 1 at Paris Gibson Education Center in the cafeteria. We will be doing interviews on the spot, I do believe, for all sorts of positions. Any of the ones that are open are the ones we're going to be looking for. Huge thank you to Human Resources and Becky Nelson for their constant pursuit to hire and retain employees. Just as an update to the board, we currently need 4 elementary teachers, and this is just for the teaching side of the house. 4 elementary teachers. Ideally, we would take 9, but 4 is a necessity. 5 special ed teachers. In the secondary, we do have 2 positions. We have Spanish and middle school ed open. And then as far as our paras and our aides go, we are half full. That means we need 30 to 40 paras and 30 to 40 aides. That caused a little bit of panic in me when I heard those numbers, and then I was reassured that's normal. And we need an incredible amount of time for teachers now until the school starts. And so that's an update for our timing. With our next slide, Chorus School of Morningside, their ribbon cutting is coming up, and they have a lot of things going on at that school. If you follow them on social media, you'll see when the parents and the PTA and the wonderful announcement.
Good evening, Vice Chair Skornagoski, Superintendent Hoyer, members of the board, members of our community. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here tonight to talk about some very valuable employees that we have in our school district. They are our school nurses, and I'm going to call both Erica Harp and Courtney George to come on up here and stand with me. Erica is the director of our school nurses. I don't know if you knew this, but Great Falls is the only AA district to have school nurses in every building. And that is really something. We do that because we believe that students have the right to be healthy, safe, and ready to learn at school. And I can tell you from a building principal's perspective, it was a game changer when that happened. When we were able to add that position to each school building, made a huge difference. School nurses do so much more than just Band-Aids and ice packs, though they do that too. Our nurses help with case management for students who have complex health concerns, things like cerebral palsy, type 1 diabetes, epilepsy, cystic fibrosis, and other randoms and rare syndromes or chronic conditions. They communicate with parents, providers, coordinate care, and support students' needs. Each day at GFPS, there are at least 16 tube feedings administered, a dozen catheterizations performed. They assist with blood sugar monitoring and insulin dosing for at least half of the 30 students who are type 1 diabetics. And the nurses oversee the delivery of approximately 200 medications across our district every day. They also collaborate with our mental health care providers to help identify and care for students with mental health concerns. Our nurses are passionate about caring for the whole student, and they utilize their professional nursing skills and judgment to care for the students that they see on a daily basis. We are so lucky to have school nurses. The other reason I wanted to invite these folks in is that Courtney George was awarded the 23-24 Montana School Nurse of the Year Award, and she was also recognized by the National Association of School Nurses at their national convention this past summer. So Courtney, I'm going to pull a few statements to tell you a little bit more about her from the nomination letter. During her career with Great Falls Public Schools, Courtney has worked in a variety of care delivery models in school settings. She has been with Great Falls Public Schools for 14 years, and she has carried a caseload of 4 to 5 schools at times. She's also served as a primary nurse in one building. For primary nurse assignments, she was the nurse for Loy Elementary, where she utilized her exceptional skills at managing the care of students with complex health needs. Courtney provided several feeding tubes to students daily, managed the care of 4 to 5 students with type 1 diabetes, and met acute and chronic health needs of the general student population. She built lasting relationships with many of the students and families that she served in her time at Loy. During the 22-23 school year, she embraced her mantra of change is good, and we appreciate that flexibility. And she accepted a position as nurse for East Middle School. Once again, Courtney demonstrated an exceptional ability to assess the needs of her students and provide outstanding nursing services for the student population. She manages one of the busiest health rooms at GFPS with an average of 50 student visits per day, and she continues to be a relentless advocate for her students. She was nominated for a Good Apple Award by Stevie Yates for her assessment of a student with a concerning presentation that was later diagnosed with lymphoma. It was Courtney's thorough assessment, skill, and advocacy that helped lead to the student receiving the medical attention that they needed. She also serves in a leadership role within the nursing department, where she helps develop policies, protocols, and departmental trainings. Erica says, as her colleague and supervisor, I can easily say she is irreplaceable. She has an unrelenting work ethic and holds high standards for herself. She's compassionate, dedicated, and a great example of the role of registered nurse. So let's give her a round of applause.
And because I absolutely can't talk, the final parts of my superintendent report for the evening. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for all you do for our school district and for those students. I can't imagine dealing with 50 little health crises a day. That's just amazing, and I'm sure the family that you impacted in such a direct way. That's just you're a true treasure. So thank you so much for being a part of our district. All right. So for audience communication, I believe the one um, card here I have is tied to baseball. If there's no other comments from our community, we'll move on to our first action item, which is to look at adding baseball as a spring sport. Ms. Ware.
Madam Chair. At the June 24th, 2024 regular school board meeting, Athletic Director Mike Hinneberg shared relevant facts and 4 factors for consideration when deciding to potentially add baseball to the list of GFPS athletics and activities. I want to review those 4 factors real quick for you. The first one was the betterment of GFPS students and stored baseball into the district goals. The second factor to consider was interest and support. The third was financially viable and sustainable. And the fourth one is the feasible. The key spoke to different things that make it feasible, such as the availability of officials, the sporting complex itself, the availability of buses. It was recommended that the board budget committee discuss this and evaluate it, and our board budget committee did meet on July 24th, 2024 at 10, with baseball as just one of several agenda items. From that meeting, it was shared that the GFPS board of trustees needs to consider those 4 factors noted above to determine if or when we should adopt baseball as a sport. Keeping in mind Title IX compliance, availability of bus drivers, buses, and officials, scheduling complications, field availability, and the support for funding for student
So just for a matter of kind of explaining how we'll proceed with this, I wanted to open the floor first to any questions, and please keep it to questions. And we will wait until there's a motion on the floor before offering comments. And the other thing to consider when we make a motion, that essentially it's best practice with the Montana School Board Association to offer a positive um, motion. It kind of helps eliminate that double negative when voting. So even, for example, if you wanted to vote against baseball, what you would do is offer a motion saying you support baseball and then vote against it. That would be the proper protocol, which I understand somewhat confusing, but I wanted to lay that out there for all of our folks in the community and for my fellow trustees. Yeah. So first of all, if there's any questions from my fellow trustees before we take a motion, go ahead, Trustee Thompson.
Yeah, I've got a question for Trustee Finicum and the Budget Committee. I was thinking that there was going to be a recommendation coming forward. Since there isn't a recommendation from the committee, I would be interested to know what your thoughts were.
May I?
Sure.
Awesome. Well, one thing that I would like to do is I would like to get a little bit of feedback from baseball community in general and find out how they have done on the different items that we've talked about and try to see if we're to a point where we can make a decision intelligently. This is weird. So that we can make an intelligent decision based on the knowledge and information that we have, and or do we wait until we have more information? Also, I would also like to give AD Henneberg an opportunity to say whatever might be on his mind at this point. Just an update on how our budget is shaping up for this year. I know Brian has a lot of details that we'll talk about for the overall budget, which the overall budget just really does not look very good. I know that's really shocking to everyone. And we're really making it a point to focus on the big picture of what our job is to educate kids and safely and doing all of the right stuff. And I also want to know what we should be doing with the baseball question. So why don't we ask for one of the leadership folks off the baseball group
I
to
was going to say, perhaps maybe we start with Mr. Henneberg. Um, not trying to catch you off balance here, but essentially, considering these four areas of concern and the feasibility questions, do you feel like you've been able to address those feasibility issues outside of um, essentially the budget, which I know is outside of your control? Probably.
Okay, do you mind kind of paraphrasing that
Yeah,
for me?
absolutely. So considering the feasibility issues and the concerns as presented by Superintendent Hoyer, uh, have you, do you feel like you've addressed those feasibility issues outside of the cost? Or, you know, as we're putting together this recommendation or this vote, are there factors that we should include as benchmarks or markers?
Well, I honestly, I feel like I presented facts. You know, I think that's what I was asked to do. And I think I've presented facts both pro and con as I see it. I think when things like this are in the discussion phase, um, you know, you can look at it through a lot of different lenses. I think it's completely different when they're in the implementation phase. And so I think probably what's most important for me is that we get some form of direction from the board who ultimately makes the decision moving forward so we can start to work for solutions on some of those concerns, one way or the other, or approach it that way. I think when things are in limbo, it's extremely difficult to get solid answers because it's all what's the word I'm looking for? It's all speculative, at this point. So, over the last month and a half, I think, worked with questions from the baseball community, tried to provide, some answers in terms of our budget and what our costs have been and what I would predict some of our costs being moving forward. But in terms of really solving any of those at this point, no, because everything remains speculative until we have a decision or a direction in which way we're moving.
Before we turn it over to the question for our community here, are there any other questions of Mr. Henneberg or our staff? All right, so I think one of the primary questions that we have for our baseball community is we have two options here to consider, and one is starting baseball in spring of 25, and the other is adopting in spring of 26. And so to get a sense from you, um, if we're looking to have private support to get these programs going, is there a reasonable timeline? Whoever you feel would be appropriate.
But I love what we do with the Realtor Association and School District. By the way, that other thing, please give me her information. Realtors will adopt a school to read.
Raise
Yeah.
readers.
We'll take Valley View. That's near and dear to my heart. My wife works there. So anyway, when it comes to your question about 25, 20, or 26, you know, I understand about budgets. Mr. Finnick and I have had many conversations, and Kim and I as well. So there's probably going to be some people here to get upset at me, but 2026 to me makes more sense. And the reason why is then we can all work together for solutions to figure out what we need to do from a private sector and for the school district to make this successful. And there's going to be some things that happen. But it's also like we can't just get you the money right now and then hope that you guys approve it. It's kind of like a building permit, right? I want to build a big monster house, but until the city gives me a permit, I don't need the money, right? So if you guys can give us the date or the proposed date, then we can go to work and get you the money. I don't think getting the money is going to be a problem. I already told Mr. Finicum that. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but we have to come up with some kind of road and some kind of timelines for us to hit so that everybody's held accountable for this to happen. And we will do our best to keep it budget neutral. You know, I understand that the Title IX stuff. I 100% understand that, and I'm very cognizant of that. There are boosters. There are things that we can do to make sure that baseball stays successful, but not only baseball, every other sport that we have, every other one, whether it's art, music, whatever it is. There's stuff that we can do as a community. If we don't know about it, we can't help fix it. So I understand a lot of this is coming to light because of baseball and where they might play and how the complex looks and all those kinds of things. But the private sector cannot help the school district if we don't know when you want to do it. So from my point of view, 2026 makes more sense. I know it's going to hurt some other boys that want to play right now, but for the long term of Great Falls and the long term of baseball, to me, that makes way more sense. So I don't know if you have any other, you and I have talked quite a bit. Do you have any other questions for me? I'm better at asking questions than speaking.
Sure, Trustee Thompson.
I would just like a little bit of clarity on the money issue because to me, worse than not having baseball would be to have baseball for 3 years and then have to cut it. So, are you talking about the upfront costs, the cost to run it for 3 years, and then some kind of an endowment or something that would be the cost of baseball to run in the future?
Well, I would assume that once it's in the school's budget, it's in the school's budget, correct? And if you guys make cuts, then it would be cuts for all athletics. It wouldn't just be for baseball. So once it's in your budget, it's in your budget. However, boosters help support the clubs. We do it already in the private sector with all the travel clubs. Those cost a lot of money to run as well. So we're already doing it. So we would help support that. But once it's in your budget, it's in your budget. From my point of view, I don't know how you guys run the things at the school district because I'm not privy to that. But in my world where I run budgets, once it's in the budget, it's in the budget. Unless the board decides to cut it completely, and that would be a board decision, not the public sector.
So there's kind of two thought processes behind Amy's question there. So first off, you're on the right track that if we get the initial funding plus 3 years of private and then to be budget neutral, that's kind of what our game plan has been going forward for the last couple of months. One question that I'm going to ask after I answer the second part of that question is just how has that fundraising been going? But to the thought of the second part of Trustee Thompson's question was an endowment. And one of the things that we could be looking at, which we really have not discussed yet, is to have a big bucket of money that is called the endowment for probably called future expansion of sports. And that could include flag football, that could include lacrosse, that could include hockey. And it seems to me like there was two other sports that are
There's
kind
like
of,
14 more.
there's a bunch. I mean,
Mhm.
I hate to use the word they're lined up like ducks after this conversation, but if there is a big pool of money that is set for that type of thing, that also is another thing for us to look at for the Title IX things. So that really has not been a part of our ongoing conversations. So far, we've been talking about initial funding and then 3 years of private funding. And then Zach, you're correct. After that, if the district needs to do budget reductions, generally that's going to be a direction that the board sends out, and it either is across the board or it's some other fashion of cuts, which,
Some other mechanism.
yeah, it's a different mechanism, and it probably would not be focused at any one particular sport because the athletic budget is 2.15% of the overall budget. I just can't imagine that we would pick and throw a dart at baseball and say, "Boop, you're done."
I wouldn't think so. And I think you and I have talked as well about the endowment. You know, I, from the business sector point of view, I would do it for all extracurricular activities in Great Falls Public Schools. Those endowment funds, you can raise funds and they generate money. So then when it's football season, football comes to you and says we need 21,000. You just write them a check out of the fund, you know, and the money continues to grow and the money continues to be raised. That's my own opinion.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
One more question from Trustee Sunchild.
Sure. You want me to answer that or somebody else? Sure.
I was gonna say,
Would you like me to move? Oh, I don't know
Side by
about that.
side.
We're gonna become best
We're-
friends.
I'm not so great with other people.
So as we move forward in this plan, he's spot on. Before Mike and I are going to put a lot of energy into baseball, we have to know when are we starting baseball. And from there, the expectation is going to be very simple. This money's coming into the district. Districts runs athletics currently. We have Mike to help facilitate that entire process. So we build a committee that facilitates the communication and the collaboration with all of our community partners, whoever wants in on baseball. It's a small group to start with. They grow the group on the outside, but they have representation that comes in. We have these discussions moving forward, and we set very, very, very clear benchmarks. So, for example, baseball's a go in 2026. All right? By X date, the committee members are named. Mike and I are on the committee to start with. We add our community members to the committee. From there, we determine what are the real numbers, not estimated cost numbers. What are the real numbers? Then we set those real numbers. We bring it back to the committee. Then we say, all right, here is target fundraising date number 1. Before we can advertise for a position and make the first sets of purchase for baseball, this number has to be met and the committee has to be on board. The committee may make recommendations to Mike and I that we take to Superintendent Hoyer that eventually come to the board. But just like any other athletic endeavor in Great Falls Public Schools, it's Great Falls Public Schools running this endeavor and giving direction to make sure that we stay compliant in the 10,000 facets that we must stay compliant in. And that has to be the position that goes, because I don't think Mike or I are in a position of prognosticating what may be or what may not be, and then get caught with our foot already almost on the brake when we're looking at a September 1st date for a season that rolls in March.
yeah, I have a follow-up too.
What happens if then you have these dates and they're not met, or if that happens? Like if you say by X date, we have to have this money to secure a coach, or what if those dates aren't met? What if the funds don't?
We're bringing it back to you. Yeah, we'll be bringing it back to the board. And I think that has to be some of the precursor in there, is long-range, long-term planning determines whether or not we're ready to say we're moving in this direction. It would be like me in the world of federal programs right now, assuming that I had $21.5 million and now it's all gone, but saying, yeah, I could live off of those costs because I once had the money, assuming there's going to be another giant pandemic that comes down the road. No, we're going to step this through and make sure that we know we have set benchmarks and those benchmarks are met. And the understanding agreement is if we don't get to this fundraising goal or this completion part, securing facilities, all of those things by these dates, we're coming back to you to say, I give the report, we haven't met these objectives with one of the members from the community panel.
Okay. So, clarifying question then, do we need to include any timeline or fundraising targets in our resolution? Or should the resolution simply say a year and essentially establish a committee led by the two of you?
I think I would want you guys to set the target date coming out of this resolution that by June 1st, 2025, we know we have X, Y, and Z in place and that those benchmarks have been met on the backside. If not, we're coming back to the board for a resolution to dissolve baseball at that point in time. That's the only thing that makes sense moving forward from there. I think the community and the district both will look for a way to play ball with one another. We just have to be able to figure out, I know, I'm really good. No pun
That's
intended.
good.
We just have to figure out what those ground rules are up front and establish those rules and communicate just on those things, knowing that Mr. Hindenburg and the building principals, they make all the decisions on what goes on in their high schools in regards to activities, clubs, those kinds of things.
All right. Other questions? I feel like there's. Is there more questions or are we ready for a motion?
Can I add to that before you ask another question?
But, hold on.
I did have a quick
Yeah,
question.
let's allow another question
Does
here.
anybody can answer this question, how the policy will have to, our policies will have to change to allow the private funding, kind of like I think what Billings did? I'm kind of asking you because I figured you might know, but anybody could, Heather, you can
Matt.
chime in too,
Me?
or Lance.
I don't know how to answer that
I can
question
answer
for the
that.
school district.
All right, I'm back. All right, so yes, if we decide to go the route of community funded baseball and we make this commitment to one another, an emerging sports policy will have to be adopted by this board.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd like, assuming there's no more questions, that's not to say that there's not opportunity for comments. I'd like to have a motion on the floor so that we can have discussion.
Prepared to make that, Madam Chair.
All right.
All right.
Trustee Bronson.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Trustees adopt well, let me start over again. I move that the Board of Trustees endorse a plan for adoption of men's baseball to commence in the spring of 2026, subject to the following contingencies or goals. Number one, that a committee along the lines proposed by Mr. Boyd and Mr. Griffin be established under the guidance of administration to work on the specifics of the plan. Number two, that the committee is to be guided by the 4 factors that are set forth in the agenda report. Number 3, that the final plan, if there is one, be submitted to our consideration as the board no later than June 1, 2025. Number 4, that as a specific component of the plan, you must address whether this plan would satisfy the requirements of Title IX. And that's the motion, and I'm just making that for the purposes of hopefully a second and then discussion.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We all heard the motion. I will open the floor to my fellow trustees for comments.
Don't go anywhere yet.
Not sure.
So, all right, so first we'll have questions, or excuse me, not questions. You should have asked your questions already. We'll have comments from my fellow trustees, and then we'll open it up to comments from our community.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Trustee Bronson.
since I made the motion, I'll speak to some of the considerations. I will tell you that I came here tonight with the intention of moving that we postpone consideration of this at least until the 2025 budget cycle. Although I think that's somewhat consistent with the suggestion that Mr. Griffin had made that we move the adoption of the program up to 2026. But let me just mention some of the considerations that are important, I think, to all of us as we move forward here. And if you disagree, you'll certainly have the opportunity to say so. We much appreciate all of the comments that we've received from the supporters in the baseball community. And I especially want to note again, as I think both I and some of the other trustees noted in recent weeks, we really appreciated the tenor of the comments. They were positive. They offered good suggestions. They offered ideas. Speaking as somebody who has been in the elected public official arena for a long time, I can tell you I much appreciated it. My experience on the city commission and on the planning board and zoning commission was not as good as this one. I will tell you that. But in the comments that you have made, you obviously address 2 of the 4 factors that are very important for us in terms of the community support also the fact that such a program, I think, does certainly better our students who do participate in it. But we as the board have to weigh the more difficult considerations of financial viability, sustainability, and feasibility. And even though it was discussed in the budget committee meeting, I think it's important for the community as a whole to understand what we are facing as a board and as a district. We just don't budget 1 year in advance. We look 3 and 4 years in advance, and we look at realistically what this district could face. Here are some hard numbers. If things don't change at the legislative level and or with the community's desire to support additional mill levies, right now we're looking at shortfalls of $2.6 million this fiscal year, $3 million next year, and $3.2 million the year after. They're shortfalls because when you add up what the legislature gives us and what the community has already said they are willing to support us based on past levy decisions, those monies, less the expenditures, are always going to produce a deficit in those 3 years. The reality is the costs of educating our young people are rising, and we don't have the resources to meet that, which presents us as trustees in a very difficult situation. Certainly we can look at some of our reserves that we do have to help in some areas. But every time we tap the reserves, we have to remember they are not backfilled by some other source of revenue. Once that money is spent, it is gone. Which is why this district has always been very prudent in looking at its reserves and what decisions we make with respect to it. We can always certainly consider going to our local voters for a mill levy. But this district has been very careful in making that decision. And I think most of you are aware what happened to the city of Great Falls last November when they went to the voters with a very good proposal for increasing the funding for our police and fire, something that I think most of us or all of us would agree is necessary. The voters turned it down. And I don't think it was because they disliked the police and fire department. They just felt that they've been put upon too much as property taxpayers. We're sensitive to that here as school district trustees. We all pay property taxes here too. So if anyone thinks we make a decision that affects everybody else and not us, not true. It affects us as well, which is another reason why we're mindful about that. So when faced with those kind of deficits, we're right away looking at the fact that we probably have to make programmatic cuts. And the reality is, with over 80% of your budget being personnel, if we have to make cuts, that means terminating people's employment. That's not something I enjoy doing. It's not something any of us here tonight, or Mr. Johnson, who's not here, really enjoy looking at. So when someone comes to us with a program that's new and says, we want you to consider it, remember those financial pressures that I just talked about. And hopefully people can understand why we're not really interested in looking at a new program if we know that we're going to have to cut other programs to support it. It's just not right for us as trustees, and it's not right for the community. Now, are there some bright stars on the horizon? Potentially there are. The 2025 session of the legislature is poised to look at some changes in our funding formula, which hopefully, if adopted, will relieve a lot of that pressure on this district and all of the other school districts across the state of Montana. But if I can use an old, baseball, analogy from my generation, I'm from the Yogi Berra, Mickey Mantle era. You probably remember Mickey Mantle's or Yogi Berra saying, "It ain't over till it's over." Well, until the legislature meets and until we know sometime in the late winter or early spring of 2025 that our legislature is going to step up to the plate and provide funding relief, which is going to help us, it would not be prudent to be starting new programs right now. Another thing to consider here too, which we talked about in the budget committee, is the fact that we're looking at two very large curriculum purchases in the next 2 to 4 years. These affect all of our students. We need a new math curriculum. We need a new science curriculum. They're not cheap, and we have to be able to budget for those. And so, bottom line is, I'm always worried about the optics of adopting a new program, even if someone says it's supported by private funds, when we're struggling just to meet the basic needs and the educational needs of our young people. So I appreciate, Mr. Griffin, you coming forward and suggesting that we take some time to look at this. I think that postponing a decision until the 2026 season makes a lot of sense because it gives us more time to consider all of these factors. And I especially want to come back to Title IX because I know some of the comments I read in recent days suggest it's really not an issue. As an attorney, I'm here to tell you it is an issue. It's a serious issue. And if a plan comes before us that in my mind is not going to be compliant with Title IX and is not going to meet all of the requirements of the Ridgeway settlement that goes back to 1982, then anything we propose here is going to be potentially subject to a legal action. And as I like to tell people, I'm a Methodist. We don't gamble, but I'll bet you that we'd lose that fight if we can't say up front that it meets those requirements. And anybody who questions that, I invite you to go to the Montana High School Association website and read the text of the settlement agreement. It's in pretty small print. My old eyes can barely read it anymore. But it goes into exquisite detail, the kind of details that Mr. Henneberg has talked about before, that anytime we're adding a sports program, we need to consider those things. And I already know that if you just say we can rely on private funding going forward, it isn't going to work. It will fall into question. And as Mr. Finicum appropriately suggested, if we're going to do anything like this, it's probably going to have to be out of an endowment that supports all athletic programs and not just one. So I just wanted the community to hear all of those particular considerations. And they are, to quote Mr. Henneberg, facts that we as a trustee or trustees have to deal with.
Any other comments from my fellow trustees?
My
Mr.
question just
Finnegan.
goes back to Zach and ask, okay, how has funding been going? What kind of questions are you guys hearing from the business owners and the people you've been talking to about baseball so far?
Well, I think the support from our community and businesses is quite strong, actually. But it goes back to they're not going to write checks and they're not going to tell us how much until they know that this is something that's actually viable. You know, I think I just want clarification from Mr. Bronson. You said postponing the decision until 2026, or I thought the motion was baseball starts in 2026 with all the other stipulations. I just wanted to make sure that I heard that right.
That is the motion that's on the floor.
And
That it's
if I may,
postponed
No,
or
no, no, sorry. The motion that's on the floor
Right.
is to start baseball in the spring of 2026, assuming that the conditions can be met by June 1st of 2025.
yeah, then I feel confident that we can do that for you guys.
All right. I'll open the floor to other comments from the community. Zach, you are the first on my list if there's anything else you want to add.
I think I've been up here long enough.
All right.
The news has got 25 minutes on me just standing up here.
All right. So I do, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I guess I would just say, you know, it isn't just me, it's the whole baseball community. And what I would say is we're very solution focused, right? And we're very cognizant of the things that you're talking about, right? Which is why it's very important about who you vote for, especially locally, right? And so when we're talking about the legislative side, that's very important, right? I mean, I deal with it at the Realtor Association. I know all about it. So we have to put pressure on those to help the school district in order to do that. I think talking about levies and mill levies and all those kinds of things, a little bit scary at the moment because of the cost of inflation and how much our damn property taxes went up, right? It was a really bad storm for the police and fire. And so it has to be a community effort. It has to be in order to get our kids taken care of in our schools. There's a lot of benefits to sports with kids in schools. And there's a lot of benefits of not having sports in school. I understand that. But I would say that most kids get better grades and are well more plugged into their school if they have school spirit and they play for their school. And that's just my own opinion. So I'm done as long as you guys are done asking me questions. I've been up here enough.
So I just want to go through the folks that I have on my list first. I did see your hand. So I have Aaron Jensen next.
Evening, trustees. In June, as a teacher and a coach in the district, I spoke about all of the positive impacts that extracurricular activities, no matter what they are, do for our students. Today, I'd like to take a moment and talk about what I think from the conversations that we've had tonight, the two biggest issues being the funding. I think that's been talked about enough. And forgive me, Mr. Bronson, I'm not a lawyer, but I've done a fair amount of as a coach that has coached both a men's and women's sport. I am fairly familiar with the Ridgeway Act, but Montana basically has the strictest Title IX laws in the United States. Is that pretty close with the Ridgeway settlement?
I would say it's probably the strictest interpretation
Yeah.
of Title IX.
And I believe that it came about because a boys and girls basketball team, a school had built a brand new gym that the girls either had to practice in the smaller, more cramped gym, and the boys got the brand new one, and the girls couldn't practice there until the boys were done, which brought about the settlement that we now have to bring about equal facilities for all of our programs. In my opinion, I think adding baseball, again, in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think that's going to violate the Ridgeway settlement because in no way is our softball programs going to be in a less facility than they've already had. It's not like they're going to be in a smaller dimension softball stadium. Their travel, their practice schedules, nothing, in my opinion, will be impacted. I do know, obviously, that there are going to be lawyers that are going to look at those things. I would also say if you look at some of the baseball facilities that we have in town, I would say that they are very equal. I'm on the Electric City Baseball Academy board and have a son playing Legion Baseball. Sometimes they do get to play at Centene Stadium. There are a lot of times they still play at the Don Olson Fields and the Cash Warren Fields. In my opinion, those may be even subpar what we have at the multi-sports complex for our softball teams. So I think that's one thing that I think this can be added without violating any Title IX laws. Because again, I know that is a huge thing, and that's something that me as a coach, I'm always looking at. I would just like to thank everybody for being here. I didn't really have much of a speech tonight, but one thing I will say is I think every meeting that I've ever been in, I have sat in these budget meetings a lot where, you know, it's bad where some of the people that I know, if a mill levy doesn't pass, you know, they're going to be out of a job. I totally understand that. But I've also been in a lot of meetings where a lot of administrators have said, and I do personally believe this, and I've used this in my career, we are in the customer service business. And our community is our customers, and I believe that our customers are speaking loud and clear that they support this. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. All right. So next on my list is Doug Mollum.
I'm going to move it down. Superintendent Hoyer, cabinet members, trustees, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Things rolled out today. Commissioner, Trustee Bronson, thank within the Great Falls Public School Districts for the past 23 years. I have an incoming sophomore and an incoming sixth grader. And quite honestly, they're not watching right now because it's not live feed, but they're nervous, they're excited, and they're scared about what's going to happen tonight. They want to play baseball for their schools. I speak on behalf of them as a father. I speak on behalf of several other kids within our community that I've had the opportunity to coach through different sports. They want to play baseball. They just want the chance. Having the motion on the table, I thank you very much for that. Um, Give us the opportunity to start fundraising. Give us the opportunity to get the ball in motion. I am personally concerned about the talk of having it or other hands to grab money and on a personal level. Um, but at the end of the day, I trust you trustees. I trust your staff to make the correct decisions on how to move forward with that. But I thank you today for at least giving us an opportunity to, I guess, have a start date, an opportunity to start our Thank you.
All right, the last person that I have on my list who indicated they wanted to talk is Carrie Amato.
you, Commissioner and trustees, for letting me come up and speak tonight. Because I am big on the fundraising part of it too. I do a lot of fundraising, even just for my son to play ball as it is right now. So I have met with Zach, and I have met with brokers that work for the company that I work for that are willing to step in and help me get things started and get things moving so that we can get baseball into our schools. Again, they want to know that yes answer too. They want to know that we're moving forward because they can't get their plans going with me until I can say, yes, we've got a date, we can move. It's important to these boys. Like Aaron said, you know, they want to represent their schools. Not all of them play another sport, some of them do, but they want to represent the school that they go to. They want to earn the letter jacket. They want to do all that the other sports get to do. And right now, baseball doesn't get to do that. So let us get the fundraising started. Let us work with our community, and let's get these boys playing some ball and the boys behind them that want to play it as well. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. I recognize that there's some folks in the audience that may not have indicated on my little cheat sheet here that you wanted to speak, which is okay. I will give you the opportunity to. That was baseball. Isn't 401 13th Avenue South? Is that used? Okay, I thought I read your name right. Okay, so my apologies. But I would like to give folks in the audience who didn't check the opportunity to come forward.
Callie Tuckerman, got two boys coming up. Thank you for the chance to chat. I just wanted to reiterate not just the fundraising part. We will get the funds, but more importantly, we want to work with Mike. We want to work with the school district to make sure this is budget friendly after budget neutral. Excuse me. We want to help with the bus driver situation. The committee that we've already started knows a lot of people in this community. I would say between the 7 of us, we probably know the whole community. Like, we want to help with that. We want to help do whatever we can on our part, not just the fundraising. We want to help with whatever we can do to make this successful for our boys and for the school district. We don't want to put you guys in a bind. We don't want to put ourselves in the bind. We want to make sure that this is a partnership, that we're working together. We will get the funds. That is not the issue. What other issues we can help with, we will be there to help do this together. We are a community. We're going to work together, and we'll be there for whatever you guys need, because that's how much we want baseball. We're a baseball family, and we want to help whatever colors we wear, whether it's Bison or CMR. We can have our little rivalries, but we still all are a community that want the same thing. So I really appreciate one of the biggest, we've talked to some big companies and they're on board, but we needed that yes, but. So we really appreciate you giving that motion because that's what we needed to start our, so that's kind of answer your question. Like we have a lot of things, but we can't get solidification until we got that yes. So appreciate your time listening to us, reading our emails, and thank you.
All right, I believe I saw one more hand.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak. Superintendent, Board of Trustees, I also concur with Zach Griffin on the 2026. Let's look at that date for a couple of reasons. One, it allows us in this community to make sure that we get the right finances, the Title IXs, everything. And going back to what Ben Snipe said in the last meeting, let's make sure we get this right. Okay. The finances are there. I've talked to very big and very large community supporters, and they say, we're ready to go. We already support 10, 12, 15 organizations in this town. What's one more, right? We're gonna be there, but as a business owner, they're not gonna throw money towards something that they don't know is established yet, but they've already said they're on board. We can't give you a solid number, but we promise you the support is ready to go. They just need to see the green light. Mr. Bronson, I'm going to use a pun too. I'm going to bring something out of left field. We had a conversation in one of our board meetings for the Electric City, and it came from one of our former coaches that was from California, who also played in Legion Baseball. And he made some comments to where Legion Baseball started to dissolve through the West Coast. And I started to look in it more. So where he used to play Legion Baseball no longer exists. And it just slowly trickled from the west to the south, the southeast, and up to the northeast. Primarily, your largest amount of Legion teams come from the Midwest, West, and Northeast. What's happening out there is the travel ball, and it's coming our way, but it's not coming in our way with the way that the ECBA Lightning or the Outlaws do there. We are looking to create opportunities for all children to come. What's coming is the pay-to-play programs, where they start to establish these teams, and they're not just picking from one city; they're picking from the whole state. They're going to get, I want these 2 kids from Missoula, these 2 kids from Great Falls, this kid from Glasgow, and it starts to dissolve the Legion program everywhere, and it's coming. As we all know, Montana has always been behind the curve compared to the higher populations of the rest of this country. But I want to tell you it's coming, and if we don't establish high school baseball, then all it's going to be is a pay-to-play program in this state, and it is coming. That's all I have. Thank you.
Sorry, can you please say your record before you
Warren
say?
Rains.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is there any additional comments? All right. I'm gonna wrap it up.
Hey, public speaker, you'll say that. Eric Hoy, been with Outlaws baseball for the last few years. Dr. Skeet softball. Marley and I were on the board. We are talking about the #1 sport registration by kids for boys. #1 soccer, boys and girls. 2 baseball, 3 football, 4 softball. Most popular registered youth sports. We don't have the most popular boys sport in high school. That's all. That's weird. That's all I gotta say.
All right, thank you so much. All right, is there any additional comments from my fellow trustees? Yes, Trustee Finicum.
I want to reiterate a couple of things that Trustee Bronson said. And one of the big animals to this question is school funding and what's going to happen in our next legislative session from Helena. My note here, I put, how is their action or their inaction going to affect public schools funding? That's a big issue. And having our decision made to do baseball in 25 if we were looking at the next 5 weeks to get to September 1 for that deadline, that is just seemingly overwhelming, and that would be a bad decision. I'm going to echo what Trustee Thompson said, is it would be worse to have baseball start and then have it yanked. And one of the other animals in the room is the Title IX thing. And there's a whole lot more intelligent individuals out there than me that we need to have at this table talking about that part to it. Because reading, I saw that the state of Montana is already in a Title IX fight right now. And I have no idea what that was generated from, but I'm sure that Title IX in Montana is on the radar screen, and it just takes one individual complaining, and we have a Title IX complaint going on. And they're going to look at Great Falls schools and our whole sports program, and I just don't want to see it all blow up. I know later on in our agenda tonight, we're going to talk about a tax protest. So all of those things financial comes into play. And one thing that Trustee Bronson said that I want to reiterate is you all are very cordial and very workable. So I'm going to echo that and say thank you very much. Back to you.
Any additional comments? I do want to share just a few thoughts. I think it's important for our community to know kind of where our heads at when we're making decisions. And I guess I certainly, when I joined the board 8 years ago, I did so with the hope of saying yes a lot. Being able to say yes and make improvements for our kids. That's really what it's about. It's about helping kids graduate, which I do believe extracurricular sports is a part of that puzzle. And unfortunately, over the last 8 years, we've been saying a lot of no's. And it is because of our budget. Um, we are being put in a position where we would love to pay our para educators more. We would love to have more art teachers. Right now, there's 3 art teachers for our elementary schools, and if you have a child in elementary school, that means they get art every 5 weeks. There's just so many things that I think could improve our schools that are directly tied to the budget. And as we've kind of heard tonight, our budget is not getting any better. So I'm honestly really torn on this decision. It would be wonderful to be able to say yes to our kids for once. I do think I'd like to offer an amendment to Trustee Bronson um, in that this resolution offers those 4 elements, but I do feel like it's important to put on paper that we are asking for the upfront costs and the programmatic costs for the first 3 years to be privately fundraised. That I think that that's an important component of the resolution before we take a vote. And I'm wondering if you're open to taking an amendment.
Madam Chair, I'm not opposed to that. I think by implication, though, the committee has enough flexibility to address any of the funding options given that we'll know probably by next March where we stand with the legislature. We'll probably have a much better idea what we're looking forward to in terms of planning the 25-26 budget. But I have no objection to including it within the motion. The person who seconded, I believe that was Trustee Tarosky, would also have to agree.
I agree.
All right, wonderful.
So,
all right, so I will read the motion and we'll do a roll call vote.
are you?
Do we have to vote on the
You have to
amendment
vote on
first?
the
All right,
amendment
my
first.
apologies. Okay, so we are voting to add the amendment to the motion on the floor that as part of the fundraising goals, that the upfront costs and the first 3 years of operations would be privately fundraised. Okay. All those in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
I
Aye. All right. Any opposed? All right. That part of the motion passes. All right. So then I would like to, if there's no other comments, take a vote on the motion, which is to endorse men's baseball for the spring of 2026 with, do I need to detail the four element or the now five elements? All right. Okay, with the elements to include that a school district-led committee is established. That committee is guided by the four factors included in the school district's report this evening. That a final plan should be submitted by June 1st, 2025, and that it must address any Title IX concerns, and that the upfront costs and the first 3 years of operational costs would be privately fundraised. All right, so that is the motion on the floor, and we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Patrick? Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all for your patience as we worked through that. Yes, Trustee Finicum?
So second thing now is to come up with a committee. I heard somebody say 7 human beings. Love it.
I have faith in our school district leadership. We'll be reaching out to you shortly.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Wonderful. All right. So we'll move on to the next agenda item. And I realized I should have given our wonderful school nurses an opportunity to leave after the superintendent's report. My apologies. All right. All right. We appreciate
Erica's
you.
like, how do I get out of
All
here?
right. So I'll invite anyone who would like to leave to do so now. Yes, by Mr. Boyd
district.
and Mr. Hinneberg. He'll be reaching out to the baseball community and proceed forth with coming up with a plan. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
And
You're
you
welcome
all
to
are
stay.
welcome to stay for
You're
the rest of the
certainly
meeting.
welcome to stay, but we understand if you would like to enjoy the sunshine. All right, next on the report on the agenda is the financial report and check register for June 2024. Mr. Patrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. What you have before you for the 2024 school year, it closes out the year. A couple notes on it that I would like to make is that anytime that we make a transfer from an investment fund, I note that, and on the page it's up on the screen, there was $100,000 transfer made in driver's education, so to ensure a positive fiscal year. For the year in total, there were $200,000 taken from investments and put in the actual cash of our district. They came from the rate stabilization, which is an insurance fund that helps pay the premiums of our employees. And this report includes all the budgeted funds as well as the food service fund. You can see from the revenues and expenditures, if I look at the elementary general fund, there was a 1.42% budget remaining. In the expenditures, there was 1.51%. Generally, you don't spend all your budget of those protested taxes and those types of things that don't come in. So, with that, excuse me, members of the board, my recommendation is to approve the June financials.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, trustee Trosky.
I move that we accept the monthly financial report and approve the register of payments for June 2024 as presented.
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded to accept the monthly financial report as presented. Are there any questions or comments from my fellow trustees? From our community? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes unanimously. All right, now transfer of budgeted funds, Mr. Patrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This agenda item transfers money from our general fund budget into our interlocal fund, which will help us support our operations next year. It's something that we planned the entire school year. The budget committee worked through it. We had about $5,000 or $5 million identified in ESSER funds that could be transferred. In the elementary, there's $4,453,190.54. High school, $625,490.01. That combines to $5,078,680.55. The recommendation is to transfer that to the interlocal fund, which will allow it to be used for the upcoming school year and help address our $2.6 million budget deficit that we're procrastinating right now.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, trustee Bonson.
I move that we approve the elementary general fund budget number 101 transfer of $4,453,190.54 and a high school general fund budget number 201 transfer of $625,490.01 to the interlocal agreement fund number 182.
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded to transfer funds from the elementary general fund and the high school general fund to the interlocal fund. Is there any questions or comments from my fellow trustees? Any questions or comments from our community? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. All right. Mr. Patrick, you're up again with protested taxes.
Okay, Calumet protested their taxes this year to the tune of $1,216,768.26. Montana Law 15-1-402 allows for districts to access that money and use it because our budgets are not based on anything other than cash. Our students generate a cash amount that's levied out to all our taxpayers. And the best example that I can give on why that's important to the district is our bond payments. We levy the exact amount that we need to pay our bond. And when that money doesn't come in, it has to come from somewhere. The bond company doesn't say, oh, sorry that everybody didn't pay their taxes. You don't have to pay the entire amount. You can be $100,000 short. So the way the law works is Calumet pays their taxes into a fund. When they protest tax, they have to still pay it. And then when the settlement happens, that amount is determined. And let's say that of the $1.2 million, 216,000 was a successful protest by Calumet. Then that amount is levied to all of the taxpayers in the ensuing year. So we're able to access the funds, and then it gets redistributed to everybody else that pays taxes. And the ironic part is that Calumet helps pay that back, and they're one of the larger payers in the district. So the recommendation to make all our budgets whole with the revenue that we expected is that we request the access of $1,216,768.26 of the protested taxes from Calumet.
Madam Chair,
Yes, trustee Finicum.
I would move that we request to approve the access the full amount of the Calumet protested tax. This will allow the district to pay the bond payment in full from the debt service fund and maintain the district cash reserves in each of the budgeted funds at their current levels.
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve requesting access of the full amount of Calumet's protested taxes. Are there any questions or comments from my fellow trustees? Any questions or comments from our community? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. All right. Next up, we have Jackie Mainwaring to talk about secondary student class fees.
Good evening again. This time I'm up here to present to the class fee schedule for extra costs that some classes at our secondaries may incur. These fees have across the board stayed fairly consistent. However, in our IT department, we are seeing an increase of cost of supplies, and so we are seeing some increase in costs in that department specifically. We also have funds available at both schools, or all 3 schools, all 5 schools, middle schools included as well, for the schools to access for families who need support with meeting the financial burden of those fees if they're in a class that they want to take. So it's Montana Advanced Opportunities is the fund that we are using to help pay for those. Any questions? You see the attachment with the assigned fees for the coming school year.
Any questions? All right. I would open the floor to a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Trustee Churosky.
I move that we approve the increase in class fees as presented in the attached document.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to increase class fees as presented. Are there any questions or comments from my fellow trustees? Any questions or comments from our community? Hearing and seeing none, all of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, next up, back to Mr. Patrick for the core Morningside parking lot.
So any projects that are estimated to be over $80,000, Montana law and our district policy 7320 require that there's a formal bid process that has to take place. And this is for a parking lot at Morningside Elementary School due to the increased traffic that will be occurring at that school. And recommendation, we hired TD&H to do a formal study and build a plan so that we have bid documents. They've completed that. So the recommendation is to allow the district to go out or allow me to advertise for bids for the parking lot. There is a little bit of a question as far as when to put those out to bid, because this is probably the worst time to go out to bid. They've got their projects full for the summer. The city has allowed us to do a parking lot, temporary parking lot. I guess we'll see how it works and those types of things, but we may want to delay the actual bid date, but this is just to keep the ball moving and know that we are planning on having a new parking lot at Morningside Elementary School.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Trustee Finicum?
I would move that we approve advertising for bidders for the Morningside Core Schools parking lot construction with a date to be determined at another date.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any comments or questions from my fellow trustees? I have one for you, Mr. Patrick. If the kind of current situation where we're using a facility that's not finished, if that works out, would we not do this, or we'll move forward with this when it makes sense?
Well, I think the agreement that we have with the city is that we will move forward with the
Okay.
parking lot. They're allowing us some grace to use it this year. So, yes.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. Is there any comments or questions from our community? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of advertising for bidders for the Morningside Elementary Core School parking lot, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. All right, next up, Luke is here to talk about insurance.
Chair,
Trustee Bronson.
I move that we accept the recommendation of the Insurance Committee for an overall increase to the employer and employee premium contributions of 10% respectively, along with the increase of the premium buy down of $35.78 from our rate stabilization reserve fund. Included in this motion is the request, which we also should approve, to accept the recommendation to continue our flexible spending program and voluntary insurances.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to accept the insurance committee's suggestions for insurance increases in the upcoming year. Are there any questions or comments? Trustee Finicum?
Question, I will certainly go with what the committee has put together. My question is, has there been much or a lot of conversation about how the state health trust has been coming around? Is that something that, I'm sure you guys had it on your plate to talk about, but was there a lot of gains to be kept with our existing program that we have that is working well?
Yeah, and Trustee Finicum, to answer your question, along with what Mr. Decon said, this state trust program has indicated they're prepared to move forward, but there's no real details yet, and it's just that they're not in a position yet to approach all of the districts with a specific plan or set of plans or ideas. We, on the other hand, are prepared once we know where they're coming from, whether or not that would be prudent for us to join. If I may, Madam Chair, I was just going to address an aspect of the committee here. I serve as your representative on the committee, and I really want to commend Mike Bonville and the Lion for all the work they do on our behalf. They really do an excellent job of making sure that they can present the best possible recommendation to us. Again, recognizing that sometimes these premium increases are necessary. But I also want to commend all the committee members and the different constituent groups. They all participated vigorously in the conversation, and this is a consensus of the whole committee. We don't have any people who are saying, no, don't go forward with this.
Super, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from my fellow trustees? Any questions or comments from our community? All right, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Lou. All right, nothing was moved from the agenda earlier, so we will move on to reports, discussion, and policies. And we begin with a secondary pilot program report from Ms. Bainwaring.
Ms. Frisbee, just a comment really. When I heard you say drama at North, my blood pressure spiked. And so I'm wondering if there should be a different name to that. I'm just saying. Okay. There you go. Yeah, that's a lot better. Thank you. And thank you for all that work, your team and also the district's leadership team that has been helping with this.
So now that some of these programs, particularly the ones in this far left column, are kind of moving into permanent, will there be efforts to offer the classes that were piloted at North to East and piloted at CMR to Great Falls High and vice versa? I just think it's important that we offer our students at both sides of the river the same opportunities. So I am glad to see that that's an option and hope that that's the direction it moves. So, any other questions or comments? Wonderful. Thank you so much for this report. We appreciate you following through on this.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have first reading of new and revised board policies. Mrs. Hoyer.
Or recognize a couple of these policies in the fact that they already came to you for one reading. Agenda that's 23. In lines 21 and 22. The committee strongly felt after discussion that it was important to leave this in to hear from a spokesperson from both sides of the issue because we are committed to hearing and honoring both sides of a concern. We feel it's the correct thing to do for both our district and our community. So we left that in there as well. When you look at the form that goes along with that, that's 2314F. It was formerly 2310F1. After consideration of the school library request for consideration of material forms that was brought forward by MTSBA, we actually liked ours better. And so we put forward to adopt it and renumber it. So it will look familiar if you've ever been involved in any of these reconsideration forms. But we liked how it just felt a little bit more inclusive of what we were trying to achieve. The last one is policy 3611 that deals with gangs and gang activity. The big change on this one is line 16, where we wanted to capture the impact of electronic communication, including social media, in gangs and gang activity and how that interrupts the student learning environment within our schools. So you'll see that change there, as well as in line 20, the term may be interpreted to has been included in that. So these are brought forward to you for first read and consider and then ask questions. Thank you very much to the policy committee and to those of us who were involved in that, the conversation. It was a really robust conversation around that, so I appreciate that.
All right. Any comments or questions at this time? All right, wonderful. Now we get to wrap up with discussion, committee reports, and comments. And I'll start with, Trustee Thompson.
I want to thank all of my fellow trustees for helping us to get to a good a good motion tonight. I thought that went well, and we worked together to find a solution that hopefully will work for everyone. I'm nervous about it, but I guess I'm happy that we could say yes, and I also am cognizant that we need to make sure that our community understands that this is privately funded as we go forward in our funding conversations.
All right, Trustee Sunchild.
See other people do it. And I watch everybody's Amazon wish lists on there, and I see how excited they are when they get stuff, and their themes start coming together. And I saw 2 classrooms, one teacher power washing her rug, and another one starting to hang up. Jackie can probably guess who it is. But anyway, and you start to see everything coming together and how excited they are, and just you just it's a blessing.
All right, Trustee Finicum.
That is awesome. I appreciate that. So first off, the nurses and seeing Great Falls get applauded for one of our best, and also reiterating that we have a nurse in every building. I'm just so glad that that is still happening. Looking for 4 elementary teachers still. Boy, that just puts a scratchy head going on. And finding that we're going to probably find 30 paras and aides between now and the day school starts. Yeah, that's, speaking of blood pressure, that'll do that. Stuff the bus coming up. I'm sure you're going to say something about unstuff the bus. I'll leave that to you. And also that, there's a game plan going forward. Baseball acronyms. I applaud getting somewhere, and also making sure that Mike Henneberg is not saddled with all of the details. So that really rings true to me.
Trustee Bronson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to address what some of the trustees have said again about our discussion this evening about baseball. One of the things that has made me feel much more comfortable about this going forward goes back to the way our district has approached a number of these very difficult issues. And I think about the way that we handled the expenditure of ESSER funds, and why we at the end of the cycle were in a much better position than many of our other AA partners. I think that we're headed in the same direction with respect to baseball. Not to criticize those folks in other communities, but I will. I think sometimes they jump on these issues much too fast and without a lot of healthy dialogue within the community and a lot of careful consideration. And I appreciate the fact that not only the community but our district here is willing to look at it, but again, very cautiously, so that we can justify to the entire community, especially the taxpayers, that we're doing right by them in the process. The only other thing I was going to mention goes back to our approval of the consent agenda. I was really pleased what the Hill family decided to do with respect to the donation of those wheelchairs. And I just wanted to note, unless you had the experience, these automated wheelchairs are incredibly expensive. Several years ago, I represented a young man in a battle with our state Medicaid program as to whether or not they were going to pay for one of those. We won the case, but one of the things that drives the state nuts is the cost of these devices. They are very, very expensive, and they know that quite often they're necessary for the user, but they just hate to have to pay for it unless somebody pushes the button, which we did in that case. But sadly, a lot of folks who use them do not end up living a lengthy life. But the chair still has a very useful life after reverberation, as we found. And kudos to that family for thinking of us and that we could perhaps use that in our physical therapy programs. But I wanted to note that for the record.
Trustee Jarofsky.
I think most of what I have has been said, but I'm looking forward to the district and the baseball community working together to work towards the goal of baseball in the spring of 26. There's obviously a lot of variables between the community partners and support and the state and the funding formula for the districts, but I'm glad that we were able to give them kind of a, some sort of a date and looking forward to that. And then it's really hard to believe it's already August and school's already starting soon, and got to get my kids school supplies, and I've seen teachers coming in and setting up their classrooms, and so yeah, summer's almost over.
All right, thanks. Yes, so I wanted to just remind everyone in the room there's still volunteer opportunities if anybody wants to spend, looks like a rainy day, Thursday, at a bus at Target or both Walmarts. Last year we were able to get more than 16,000 items to distribute to local kids, both through the Back to School Blast and we put together boxes and boxes and boxes. This room on Friday will be filled with boxes of supplies designated for each of our schools. So we're fortunate to have more than 100 volunteers in our community help out with that event to meet the needs of our kids. Unfortunately, somewhere around 2 in 5 of our students live in poverty in our community. And we had more than 400 homeless students last year. So the need in our community is very real. And we are fortunate to live in a community that also rises to the challenge to try to meet that need. If you would like to volunteer, there's still volunteer opportunities for the Back to School Blast as well, which is Friday, August 16th. You can go to volunteergreatfalls.org and sign up. So there's those great opportunities. Guess what? We're also recruiting volunteers for Worlds of Work. It starts in mid-September. You can also find those there. So there's lots of great ways to get involved in our schools, not just fundraising for baseball. We have wonderful opportunities to walk hand in hand with our school district to make our schools better for our kids. So if you know any families that do still need backpacks, do encourage them to go to Back to School Blast. There are 900 plus backpacks spoken for already, but we do have the ability for walk-ins starting at noon on the 16th. Did I see Trustee Whitaker
I
raising
just
his
had
hand?
to say that you knocked that out of the park.
All right, okay. Next, we have upcoming events. There is a work session, is that right, on August 15th? Okay, I believe it's for the Budget Committee. And then our next regular meeting is August 19th. Of course, I look forward to seeing you all at Convocation on August 26th. And then we have the core school coming up. So with that, the meeting. Okay. Right. Perfect. Sorry. Right. The budget adoption, but it's for the entire board. My apologies. Thank you for the clarification. With that, thank you all for your patience and meeting adjourned.